Chapter 31, Highway Diner. Chapter 31, Highway Diner. Bowsette, Peach, and Boom Boom were now near Moonview Highway, right at the border of the Mushroom Kingdom. It took a day to leave the confines of Dark Land, dodging lantern ghost patrols and nearly falling into a nest of lungfish as they entered the secret swamp. It was another day until they reached civilization again, a place to take refuge. How Peach did this all on her own the first time was beyond Bowsette. Though, knowing her, she probably took a plane as far as she could and parachuted out onto Dark Land, or something like that. Now, they were near enough to the Mushroom Kingdom that they could access the warp pipe network to quickly travel all along the continent. That was lucky, but it also meant that they needed to solidify their plans, and quickly. So they decided to find a small diner to stop at and eat, the Tangerino Grill, so they could discuss plans. And using a spare Bowser phone that Peach somehow had access to, they called up a friend. Or should Bowsette say, an ally? Definitely not a friend.
"Glad to be here,"
said Nabbit, sitting on a cushion so that his head could reach above the table at this booth. Bowsette sat next to the window, across from Peach. She had kind of hoped that they would be sitting next to each other, but it was nice to be able to look at her face like this. Not that she... Oh, who was she kidding about that? She had tried marrying Peach far too many times to admit that it was just mere geopolitical-fueled kidnappings. Peach was a true beauty, and the fact that Bowsette looked so much like her was not a minus at all.
"We're glad to have you here,"
Boom Boom said, sitting next to Bowsette and putting his arm up on the booth around her, presumably to stretch out his very long arms that had been in chains for several months. He had better not be getting fresh anytime soon, though, because Bowsette ain't gonna have kind reactions to that, let her tell you.
However, Boom Boom doesn't think we've been introduced. "I'm Nabbit,"
said Nabbit.
"I bag it, I grab it. I nab it. That's my name. Get it? Hey." "Yeah."
Boom Boom gave Bowsette a side-eye glance, and Bowsette shrugged.
"So, what do you need bagged? Or grabbed? Give me the details. Tell me about it. I wanna listen."
Peach quietly reached and grabbed the coffee from in front of Nabbit and set it on the table in the booth behind her.
"We're about to embark on a quest,"
Peach said.
"A quest? What kind? Defeating Bowser again? Saving the Sprixies? Saving the princess? A different princess, I mean." "We're trying to defeat Emperor Morton Koopa,"
Bowsette said.
"He's the most powerful Koopa in 1,000 years, 16 feet tall and currently a pile of bones attached together by twisted dark magic. He's set to envelop the world into an aeon of darkness if he gets his way." "Ah! That's a toughie. Pretty interesting. Gotta think about it. No way. Too dangerous."
Nabbit said. Without missing a beat, he added.
"Name a price." "Yeah, I'll think about it." "Done. 50% and it's done." 50% of what?
Boom Boom asked.
"Net profit." This is a mission to save the world, not to make money,"
Boom Boom said. Nabbit shrugged with his nubby little arms.
50% of all loot. 15% and that's final,
Bowsette said, crossing her arms.
"Your task is to help us go around the world and contact all of Bowser's old lieutenants. His generals and commanders and old allies. We're handing out the call. Telling them together. Gonna build an army." "That's about right,"
Bowsette said.
As many as we can reach. I'm talking to Nkupa, Petey Piranha, Big Montgomery, Porcupuffer. Anyone. Heck, bring us Chef Tord and we'll accept him. Understood. I'll grab them, bag them, send them over. Express shipping. Thank you, Nabbit,
Peach said.
And if you end up nabbing anything of material value, you can keep it for yourself. It's all yours. Already done.
Nabbit held Peach's blue shell power-up in his hands. She definitely wasn't getting that back. Nabbit hopped out of the booth and dashed away without another word. He was a trustworthy ally, but untrustworthy at the exact same time. The ultimate enigma. He'd get the job done, but the wonder was whether he actually heard the instructions correctly. Speaking of trustworthy, Bowsette looked to her side at Boom Boom.
So?
She said.
So?
Boom Boom closed his eyes and sighed.
Yeah, you know Boom Boom. He's getting out of here. He's happy to be out of prison, but he can't go on with this plan. Bowing out halfway through, like usual,
Bowsette grumbled.
Boom Boom's very sorry. He'll be watching you from the sidelines, cheering you on. Is that okay? Whatever. Sorry.
Boom Boom removed his arm from the booth. He got up, did a little bow as he always did, and walked out of the restaurant. Bowsette cried a little bit again. This new sensation of not having to hold back her emotions. It kind of made her feel good. But it gave her that ugly crying face everyone always complained about. In response, Peach moved to the other side of the booth and put her arms around her.
It'll be okay, Bowsette. It's never okay. Boom Boom always does this. Why can't he just stick with it? Why doesn't he believe in us? We can still save the world. You and me.
Peach and Bowsette. Bowsette blushed and pushed Peach away.
Sorry,
she said when she realized what she had done.
You're right. We need to figure out our plan and make sure to follow through perfectly. Right.
Peach pulled out a whole notebook from her pocket, which didn't seem possible but she still did it.
So I've sketched out all the things we need to do so far.
She begins.
First things first, and this is major, we need to get your magic back. Yeah, that's important,
Bowsette said. Not being able to harness the very thing that allowed her to defeat Morton Koopa last time was a major downgrade.
But how? Well, I'm still working on that, but I imagine we might be able to. Well, bargain with the Mushroom Soul Spectre that took your powers in the first place. Bargain with an ephemeral, unthinking beast. Somehow. Okay. And then we have to gather all the generals, of course.
Bowsette said.
And we'll approach it like this, we'll take a map, go east to west, north to south across the continent, trying to find every single former ally of yours that you think will be useful. You can go through this later and fill it in so we can plan a route better. If I even know where King Boo is these days. And I think it might be useful to go to a few other places around the world, if you know what I mean. I am not asking for help.
Bowsette shook her head with great ferocity. Peach shrugged.
Just a thought. Will we have the Mushroom Kingdom at our disposal?
Bowsette asked.
Actually, right now we're going through a kind of tough time,
Peach admitted.
A lot of areas are trying to secede, and our armies are currently occupied with keeping the peace. It's all your fault.
Bowsette took the blame with more pride than she should have.
Well then, I guess we'll have to rely on my people only,
Bowsette said.
If we amass a force we can invade, and the people will quickly turn on Morton. As long as he hasn't returned to his full form we will be able to overwhelm him. Though, some magical device to seal him away forever would be nice. It certainly would. Were you serious about the Firestone amulet being destroyed? Yes. Shattered into a million pieces, carried into the wind and out to sea. It can never be reformed again. And I spent years assembling it in the Kalimari Desert. My crowning achievement. It's a metaphor for my life, isn't it?
Bowsette began to cry again.
Oh, Bowsette.
They had a whole lot of planning left to do. With Nabbit on his way to accomplishing, something, and Boom Boom once again abandoning his friends, the brunt of the burden laid on these two women. It was up to them to save the Earth from destruction by Morton Koopa. That was going to require Bowsette to stop crying, though. End of chapter. Chapter 32, Chapter 32, Her Own Bed. Chapter 32, Her Own Bed. There was no parade, no hero's welcome when Peach and Bowsette returned to the Mushroom Kingdom and came back to Peach's castle. Bowsette was okay with that. Instead, when they arrived, they did so in secret, taking one of Peach's personal underground trains to a back entrance of the castle. Bowsette had no idea this existed, so it must have been a recent addition to the Royal House Toadstool's defensive infrastructure. She wondered why such a structure was built. It was nice to be entering a secluded part of the castle without also being kidnapped by Koopa Patrol guards when doing so. The past few weeks had been tumultuous for Bowsette, and she most certainly did not want to relive that all over again. That today was relatively peaceful was an absolute boon. However, two toads, ones Bowsette couldn't really recognize because she was not the best at telling toads apart, gasped in terror as they saw the two women marching into the otherwise quiet foyer. Both had mustaches.
Princess! Where have you been?
The one with the brown cap shouted before running up to her. Bowsette jumped in front of her and flashed her fangs in case he was a secret attacker. You never knew with these toads. He stopped and almost had the spirit jump out of him with fear. Peach pushed Bowsette out of the way.
I left on a secret mission, and I couldn't tell you about it. I'm very sorry. Forgive me, Toadsworth. Oh, well, that's,
The toad tried to gather the words to actually say something, but didn't seem able to. The green-capped one behind him, though, pointed at Bowsette and yelled,
What is he doing here? Ka-ka-ka-ka-ka,
Bowsette laughed. She extended her claws.
My name is Bowsette, Lordess of the Dark Realms, heiress apparent to the destiny of the deities. Try that statement again. I officially pardoned Bowsette for all the crimes she committed,
Peach said.
And as absolute ruler of the Mushroom Kingdom, Chancellor, I hope that you will understand that these such rulings are final and incontrovertible. But, Princess.
The brown-capped toad stuttered.
Why would you ever let this being back into the castle like this? Surely you are not well. I am well enough,
Peach said, striking a much more formal tone all of a sudden.
You will provide for her a permanent room close to mine, and all the finest amenities the castle has to offer. Is that understood?
Both of the toads nodded.
Very well. Then I shall go freshen up. I have not showered in weeks and wish to bathe. Bowsette, I trust that you desire one as well. Oh, yeah, me too,
Bowsette said.
Definitely. I need a bath. Very well,
Peach said.
Toadsworth, please send for our handmaidens to fill up bathwater in each of our tubs.
Darn it. Oh well. Bowsette followed some handmaidens up the stairs and down the hall to an unassuming door. She opened it and found, well, an unassuming bedroom. It was cute and pink but with not much personality to it, no sense that anyone had ever much lived in here. It was likely that few ever had. That was the thing with castles like these, most of its spaces were sadly unoccupied for its entire existence. But even so, Bowsette laid down on the bed and felt her back nearly evaporate as she sank into the memory foam. This felt amazing. Not just getting a good rest for the first time since escaping from Dark Land, but just being here, like this. In the Mushroom Kingdom, but not as an enemy. In the body of Bowsette, but not hated. With Princess Peach, but not kidnapping her or fighting her. For the first time in a long time, she could spread her arms and legs out like she was making a snow angel and simply lay like this without fear of being attacked at any given moment. Wow! She was Bowsette. Not Bowser or King Koopa or anything else. She was Bowsette, a woman, and one who at the moment felt a level of contentedness that she hadn't felt in a long, long time. She could finally accept herself, at least to this degree. Bowsette drifted off to sleep. End of chapter. Chapter 33, Chapter 33, Gang's all here. Chapter 33, The gang's all here. Peach paced back and forth in front of a blackboard with many notes and sketches scribbled out on it. She stood before a small group, an elite team that would carry out the tasks before them. They were Mario, Luigi, Captain Toad, Archivist Toadette, and Goombella, who had recently returned from an excavation trip in Subcon. Toadette and Goombella were busy trading theories while Luigi and Captain Toad argued about the scariest ghosts they had ever seen. Mario simply stared at the other person in the room, sitting noticeably to the side of the four. Bowsette. It was clear to Peach that Mario was not accepting whatsoever of these recent developments, and having to be in the same room as her was disconcerting to him. It had taken a while to explain everything to even Peach's closest friends, and she knew it would be even more difficult in the inevitability that Bowsette's residence in the castle became public. So she had been practicing her explaining skills on them first. Bowsette was a cruel dictator, the despotic ruler of the Mushroom Kingdom's worst geopolitical enemy, a woman who had plunged both kingdoms into chaos with rebellions and secessions and uproar. But she deserved a chance to redeem herself. It wasn't just a confusing mix of pity and anger that Peach felt anymore. She genuinely cared about Bowsette and wanted to fix whatever was broken inside of her. Which, for the time being, meant literally fixing what was broken inside of her, as in her magic that had been sealed away by the mushroom soul that Mario unleashed a few months prior. Toad, Toadette, and Luigi were reluctant to accept Bowsette into the fold, but they seemed to be warming up to her presence a little bit. Goombella treated it as if it were no event at all, which was almost stranger considering Goombella was originally from Bowser's kingdom where Bowsette had previously ruled with an iron fist. Mario, though, was his usual aloof self. No matter. He'd get over it.
Our first phase of the plan to save the Earth is to bring back Bowsette's magic powers,
Peach said, taking out a pointy stick thing and tapping it against the blackboard.
She was the one who defeated Morton Koopa, her biological father, all those years ago, so without her power we don't have a chance.
Captain Toad politely raised his hand.
Yes, Toad?
She asked.
This is a bunch of moo-moo crap. Why can't we defeat him all on our own? We've got the Mario brothers on our side.
He gestured over to the two superheroes of the Mushroom Kingdom.
They'd never lose. Not when the Shrubs attacked, not when the X-Nauts invaded, not when Bomberman and Wario started blowing up the planet together. They stopped the bad guys every time.
Luigi took it in stride, and Mario lowered his cap like a cowboy.
But this time is a little bit different,
Peach said.
Morton Koopa is unlike anything we've faced before. Even the Shadow Queen?
Captain Toad asked.
Even Bowser, Bowsette's Galaxy Reactor? Even Culex? Yeah,
Bowsette chimed in.
I faced him myself. See, unlike any of you, I actually beat him, decades ago. I was at my full strength, with 6 generals and my first wife by my side and the Firestone amulet that gave me immense strength for one moment only. No, it is no longer with us. Sorry. We don't have any new special items to search for this time. There aren't any secret devices that will allow us to defeat him. We just have to stop him before he can figure out a way to revive his true form, or else we're all goners. So first things first, we need to figure out how to get Bowsette's powers back. We might have a fighting chance then,
Peach said.
And when she gets them back we're still going to help?
Toadette asked meekly.
Yes,
Peach said. She realized what the others were probably thinking. Why would they trust their lives with a bona fide villain, one with newly minted magical abilities that will allow her to take over the Mushroom Kingdom all over again if she pleases?
I trust her, and so should you.
Bowsette closed her eyes and smirked.
We can restore her magic if we figure out how to negotiate with the Mushroom Soul. Ever since Mario unleashed it, it has been wandering the Toadwood Forest, floating around as if it were guarding something. But we have no idea how to communicate with it, much less figure out how, or even if it could unseal her. I'll do it,
Luigi said.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts. So? The real question is, does anyone know where the Great Wizard Merlin may be?
Peach asked.
He's the only one I know of who would be powerful enough to do it. But ever since he exiled himself from the Mushroom Kingdom... Oh, I know that!
Goombella shouted.
I actually heard a story about Merlin hiding out near one of the entrances to Subcon when my party was returning. He's holed himself up in some small hut near the ocean somewhere out in the west, but nobody has been able to get anywhere near him because of all the barriers he has set up. Then, that's where we'll have to go,
Peach said. Peach looked once more at Bowsette, who was very excited to begin another adventure so soon, especially one that would directly help her out. The others didn't trust her at all, but Peach knew in her heart that this was all going to work out. Well, mostly. End of chapter. Chapter 34, Chapter 34, Game Guy. Chapter 34, Game Guy. This was bad. This was not an appropriate course of action, and Toadsworth could not stand at all that he was doing this. But the Chancellor had threatened his position, his granddaughter's enrollments at the Toad Academy, his pension, and he knew he could make it all happen if he wanted. Even if this was the worst thing he ever did in his life, he went along with it anyway. Despicable or not, it would be his burden to bear.
Is this really the only way?
He asked the Chancellor. They were in a nondescript location in the creepy cavern, searching for a shy guy-like insignia on the ground. If they could just touch it, then they would find their way.
It is,
the Chancellor answered.
Aha! Here we go.
They found it. The entrance to Game Guy's palace. A quick warp later, and they were in the middle of a vast mansion filled with all sorts of gambling machines and strange modernist artwork, but no denizens. No denizens except for Game Guy himself, standing at the top of a stairway and looking down at the two toads below him. He hopped down a few times and then straightened his bow tie.
I knew you would see me eventually, he said. It's been a long year for the Mushroom Kingdom, hasn't it? It has indeed,
the Chancellor said.
I haven't had to see you for a very long time. I do not enjoy it. Well, I have to say that I do,
Game Guy said. By day, a friendly game show host and purveyor of a casino district in Shy Guy's Shuffle City, and by night a financier of rebellion, insurrection, and mayhem throughout the continent. Toadsworth himself knew that Shy Guy's toy box had most likely been completely funded by Game Guy, and reports that General Guy was leading some sort of resistance movement in Dark Land seemed to match his modus operandi. But it was also likely that the current secession movements throughout the Mushroom Kingdom had much in the way of blame to fall squarely in his arms. Why did he do it? He was not a profiteer like that rat Lumpy, who had essentially taken over the entire dry desert with his cash. He wasn't making any money off any of this chaos. In fact, the more war, the less money there was for people to spend at his casinos. Toadsworth suspected, underneath that expressionless mask, he may very well simply have been a monster.
So, do you want me to stop my resource flow towards impeding your stability efforts?
Game Guy asked.
I'll do it, free of charge, if you invade the Bean Kingdom again. Just a little war. No, actually. We want you to increase your efforts,
the Chancellor said. Toadsworth's eyes drooped at this. He could hardly bear to hear his own complicity in this disastrous line of thought.
Ah, I see,
Game Guy said.
You want to create a revolt. You want House Toadstool to fall so that House, whatever your surname is, can rise. Precisely. It is for the good of our nation. In 100 years, we will be more prosperous than ever. Even if in 5 years we are still in a realm of disarray, the future is what really matters. Right.
Game Guy pondered this for a few moments.
I know exactly what to do. Toad Koopa tensions are at an all-time high. Bowser's escaped and on the loose. Maybe some Spikes could make a ruckus about trying to unite and reclaim Spike's lost city. Perhaps Shiver City and Starborn Valley could become embroiled in a conflict? All are very good options.
Bowser wasn't actually loose, but Game Guy most certainly didn't need to know about that right now. That was not to their tactical advantage, even Toadsworth could recognize that.
All I want to know is if the princess will survive it. Give me exclusive casino rights in Shroom City and she sure as triple pie won't. She'll be getting Game Guy's sweet surprise. Deal.
They shook hands. Toadsworth wanted to die. But instead he remained silent. End of chapter. Chapter 35, Chapter 35, An Awkward Luncheon. Chapter 35, An Awkward Luncheon. Yes, it was a luncheon in the Luncheon Kingdom. Bowsette was enthralled by the scalding hot baking seas around them, keeping the weather fiery and everyone sweating, but the whole scene was still crazy. A dozen princesses and queens and other female royals from all over the world were gathered here to eat together and gossip about everything. Bowsette was not even a real subject of the conversation, while Daisy took a few moments to adjust to the fact that the girl who kicked her butt a few months ago was now going to be eating with her. The rest didn't even seem to care. She guessed they just had more important things to worry about, then. Even Princess Shokara, a half-ghost who hadn't been in civilization for eons, was here and paying no mind to her existence. This was a much less tense situation than the meeting with the Mario Bros. Earlier this week. Speaking of them, they were still preparing everything for the trip tomorrow. The trip was going to be tough, and seeing how powerful Merlin was, if he had really wanted to escape from the rest of the world, it was not going to be easy to get through whatever barriers he had placed. They had done some more research and discovered that the hut Goombella was referring to was likely at the Quiver Cliffs, far to the west past even Diamond City. Getting there was not that difficult, BT surviving may have been. So to spend the time, Peach decided to introduce her newest friend to all her fellow royals. Gourmet Guy was here personally catering everything for them, and the food was delicious. Bowsette had never had cake this good before. Seriously. But she still felt extremely awkward about being here, like this, with these women. From the people she recognized, there were a lot of celebrities here at the table. Princess Peach, of course, sitting next to Bowsette, their chairs so close that their shoulders were touching. Princess Daisy of Sarasa Land, sporty and flames in her eyes almost eternally. Princess Shokara, a royal without a land. Nobody was quite sure where she came from, but it was clear she was just the same as the rest of them, so she was apparently accepted as a member of the crew. Princess Eclair of the Waffle Kingdom, a plain but delightfully tasty-looking woman made of the energy of pastries. Honey Queen, a giant bee from all the way over in the Honey Bloom Galaxy, taking up an extremely large portion of the luncheon table that shook every time she went tee-hee. Queen Miralda, a denizen of the mysterious Shake Dimension and unusually sprightly. Bowsette didn't know much about her. Holly Mackerel, a mermaid with extremely beautiful scales, but because of her gills she was forced to sit there in a water tank and watch while the others ate. Emmy, a violet-haired former pro tennis player who had recently married Prince Peasley of the Bean Kingdom and entered into the royal family there. And finally, Lady Bow, the daughter of King Boo who openly rebelled against her father's villainous nature. She was regal and refined, but extremely prone to slapping. She, too, was not eating, but only because ghosts didn't eat. Everyone here was fun and having a good time, but Bowsette was weary of all of this. For all the strength and energy in her spirit, her determination to succeed where she had failed so many times before, she still felt sad. Sad like she was a fake among all these real girls, that underneath this crown she was just another ugly giant lizard. Sad like these real girls had made the world a better place, and Bowsette had only ruined it due to her own greed and ignorance. Peach, sitting next to her still and eating a piece of chocolate soufflé, noticed Bowsette's dour emotions. Without a word, she slipped her free hand down under the table and grabbed Bowsette's own hand. Bowsette blushed briefly, but when nobody else seemed to notice, it was all okay. She felt something very warm inside of her, like as if the fire in her blood was going to suddenly roar back to life and she could shoot flames into the air with ease. But instead, it just set her heart ablaze, making it flutter like a kite in a hurricane. With all the effort she could make, she was going to fix all the mistakes she had caused in her life. She already knew that. But what she still wasn't sure about was the reason why. And while she came no closer at this luncheon, she still had a good time with all these princesses and queens and ladies consort and the like. Maybe she could become one of them after all. End of chapter. Chapter 36, Chapter 36, Off to See the Wizard. Chapter 36, Off to See the Wizard. The group was all here again, with all their travel gear packed and a specific route to take to reach the Quiver Cliffs as fast as possible. They could take a warp pipe as far as the western edge of Goomba Village, but from there it would take a while to get through the Sugarloaf Mountain and then further skirting the northern border of Dark Land itself. That was sure to be dangerous.
If we have time, I'd love to stop by World 4 and see the Giant Land King,
Peach said.
I haven't met him in a very long time. No time for that,
Mario said.
He's right,
Bowsette said.
Right now my kids are fighting for their lives trying to keep Morton Koopa from taking an iron grip over the kingdom. We've wasted enough time already.
Bowsette should have done all this on her own, anyway. It was stupid of her to rely on all these people that she had fought as enemies just a few months prior, and for many years before that. Mario, Luigi Mario, Peach Toadstool, Toad, and Toadette, Goombella. Okay, she didn't know Goombella very well at all, but she was very smart and cute, and had apparently been a loyal subject of Lava World for many years. So, she kinda like her. The rest, though, were her sworn enemies. She couldn't believe they were actually helping, because she knew she wouldn't have been able to do the same if the tables were turned in her favor. Peach looked at her with a questioning glance. Yeah, Bowsette was a moody jerk, we all knew that already, okay, you can stop looking now. Geez. She was pretty thankful for the help, okay? Not that she would ever say that.
We will begin our journey, as always, through World 1-1,
Peach told all of them.
We'll say hello to the families there, and then we'll go into the World 1-2 sewers to take the warp pipes as far west as we can go. This is fun. I'm ready for adventure.
Goombella shouted. Captain Toad grinned at her and saluted.
If you're looking for adventure, then you've traveled with the right Toad. Let's go.
Toadette glared at Toad. Okay, it was time for the adventure to begin. Bowsette included, in this very weird, very different situation. She was not ready for it at all, but she really did want to get her powers back, so.
Let's do this,
she said. End of chapter. Chapter 37, Chapter 37, Dojo. Chapter 37, Dojo. Gotta go fast. Gotta grab it. Bag it. Nab it. Time to enter the dojo. Dojo's empty. No wait, it's not. 24 ninjas jumping out. Kung Fu Koopa attacking. Dodging's hard. But fun. Nabbit likes stealing. Yep, that's fun. Got a wallet. Some coins. Oops, took the whole bedsheet cover off some duplighost's face. Not a pretty sight. Okay, let's jump. Over and around. Through and through. Weave and dribble. Hoops, that's a dry bone's head.
What are you doing here?
A commanding voice shouted. Hey, here's the guy. Love the guy. Came here just for the guy. Gotta nab his hat though. That's not a hat. Sorry. Didn't mean to bother you. Okay, Not true. This may have been a mistake.
Hey, want to join an army? Bowser's army? Or something like that. I didn't ask the details. Bowser's a girl now. Something like that. Needs you to help stop an evil villain. Who? What? Who are you? Nabbit. Have it? You had it. I have it. I got it. You got it. No.
People kept attacking Nabbit. That's okay. Nabbit's fast. Nabbit's too fast. Nabbit's got this.
I got told this. I'm telling you.
Nabbit nodded in complete seriousness. Swung his bag around. Hit some ninja down.
Morden Koopa. Some guy. He's back. Should be not back. You gotta help. Oh. Well then. Actually, can we sit down and talk about this? Sure thing. I like to sit. Sitting's fun. Can't do it forever though. Gotta move. Gotta go fast. You know what they say. All toasters toast toast.
Hand on Nabbit's shoulder. Okay then. A little frisky. Nabbit's okay with that.
I just need you to explain. What are you talking about? I'll tell you right up, Master Flutter. I'll tell it all to you.
End of chapter. Chapter 38, Chapter 38, Crush. Chapter 38, Crush.
Oh, Mario. He. Stop it. Stupid. He. Mario.
Ugh. Mario and Goombella were laying in the tent next to Bowsette and Peach, and were absolutely not shutting up with their cutesy romantic banter. Bowsette knew Mario had a way with women, but he was something beyond comprehension. Knowing the power of his charm, Bowsette had to make extra sure to keep her super crown securely fastened to her head in case anyone were to try to steal it for certain endeavors. Okay, that was a joke, but Bowsette really didn't know the full extent of this power-up working its magic on her. It didn't seem like the crown was really attached to her head so much as it was a part of her head. No matter what position of gravity it was in, it didn't fall off. Could anyone even physically remove the crown from the outside? Could she even do it herself? She had never actually tried. Maybe it acted more like a curse, sealing your spirit permanently in this form. Which would honestly have been the best thing to ever happen to her. Aside from the fact that the mushroom soul deactivated her original crown and led to all the other stuff that happened earlier. This was a series of experimental mysteries she really hadn't even stopped to conceive of until now. Why did the super crown even exist? There were apparently multitudes of them hidden away in the royal treasury, but to what end? What powers did they even have except to make you a humanesque female and somewhat princess-like in appearance, and its main purpose was to help those who wanted to embrace their feminine feelings? Was there a super crown equivalent for those who felt like a boy on the inside but not on the outside? She looked over to Peach, who was asleep in her own sleeping bag, hair sprawled out across the floor. Her crown was not on, which at least ruled out for Bowsette the possibility that super crowns existed for the entire royal family and that Peach was secretly a 4-foot-tall toad otherwise. That would have been a funny twist, but no, she was just a beautiful human naturally, it appeared. Man! Bowsette was just inches away from Peach's face. If they weren't both in separate sleeping bags right now, they would be close enough to hold hands again. Bowsette knew Peach had only done that to cheer her up at that uncomfortable luncheon the other day, but it still made her all steamy and blushing when she thought about it. She had kidnapped and tried to marry Peach so many times out of this stupid sense that she was the perfect royalty and that her looks meant all, but they just hadn't really gotten to know each other that well up until recently. At least Bowsette, learning more about Peach. She wasn't sure if the reverse was happening at all, because of how incredibly aloof she was all the time about not talking about her past except in her own head. No way was Bowsette ever telling Peach about her first wife. Not if it meant the end of the world. And it could, seeing as how crucial a piece of the revolution she was. And her second wife? Well, that one was pretty easy to explain away. It was a stupid impulsive fling with an older Koopa, a reporter for the Koopa Chronicle, who weaseled her way into her life and left her all alone with Bowser Jr. It lasted all of a year and disappeared in a wisp. She was never going to live that one down, that's for sure. But the more she gazed at Peach, the more she realized how much she reminded her of those other two women. Well, at least one of the two. Bowsette actually had a crush on Princess Peach now. What a crazy twist of fate this was. She could still hear Goombella giggling as she told stories about her trip to Subcon with a bit of slurring in her voice. Sounds like those two had a few too many penguin proofs. Bowsette could really have used a drink to force herself asleep, that was for sure. End of chapter. Chapter 39, Chapter 39, Merlin on the Cliff by the Sea. Chapter 39, Merlin on the Cliff by the Sea. They had spent 2 whole days wandering around in the forest maze. Without Gino around to be their guide, that was a very stupid idea to go in there. Not a shortcut at all. Bowsette very nearly felt remorse for burning down that doll several months ago, but he was also really powerful and trying to kill her, so she felt justified about it. Yep. Definitely. But now they were finally near the western edge of the continent, and had reached the Quiver Cliffs after all. Everyone was very tired. Aside from eternally peppy Goombella, all 7 of them looked like the energy had been completely drained from their bodies.
Princess! I can't walk any further.
Toadette whined.
Too much adventure. For me. We're almost there,
said Peach.
Almost there.
She carried such a big pack on her back that it was pretty conceivable that she was the strongest one of the bunch. That bag carried a full 5 changes of clothing and was probably heavier on her back than Bowsette's own shell. How did she do it? Captain Toad pulled out a map, trying to pinpoint exactly where they were in relation to the spot where Merlin's hut most likely laid.
This thing is hard to read, he said. Are you sure we're in the right place?
Toadette tapped him on the shoulder and pointed straight ahead, up a hill where there was a small hut, shrouded in an aura of magic.
Oh. Yeah. I guess we are sure.
Luigi began to shake and shiver, living up to this place's name as he quivered. They ventured onwards, up the hill, and as they approached, the area around them got darker and darker, more and more hazy, almost like they were entering an alternate dimension. Spooky stuff. Suddenly, Merlin appeared in front of them as a large disembodied head glaring down at them.
Intruders! State your business. It's me, Mario,
said Mario.
And it is I, Princess Peach, Royal Monarch of the Mushroom Kingdom, the Great Priestess of the Toadstool Way.
Now that was a royal title Bowsette could approve of.
We have come to seek your help, to call you back. Enough. I have heard enough. I do not wish to continue this conversation.
Geez.
Please.
Toadette shouted.
We've traveled for 4 days to reach you, and we need a place to rest. Will you please let us stay with you for just a bit? No. Come on.
Luigi got down on his hands and knees bowing. Apparently that piqued Merlin's perverse interest, because he seemed to change his tune somewhat.
You know what? Fine. I'll let you enter my residence. If you can pass my tests. The 3 trials of the Magic Mancer. We'll be up for anything you can throw at us,
said Captain Toad.
Oh, but will you be up for this?
Before them appeared a large lion with the face of a Koopa and colored in metallic blue, green, and red.
Or this.
A large pit of spikes formed.
Or how about this one?
A giant book thudded onto the ground. Its title read 1001 Bad Jokes, Unabridged and Uncut.
If you survive my trials of strength, skill, and endurance, you will be welcome. But it may come at a great cost. He'd cautioned before.
Bowsette stuck her fist at the air and screamed,
Come on Merlin. Bowsette's here to see you, and if you don't let us in right now, I'm gonna personally walk over and clobber you. Oh my. Yes. Please do come in. See? I'm learning a whole lot about peaceful negotiations from my girl Peach over here.
Bowsette said. Peach blushed and laughed, but the others were a little bit put off. The dark aura around the hut dissipated, and the 7 of them were allowed to walk to the door and knock on it. A head popped out. Merlin, again.
Who is it?
He asked.
Me and them,
said Bowsette.
Oh, yes, come right on in. Absolutely impossible,
said Merlin.
Mushroom soul? What is that? Mario, where did you find such a thing?
Mario shrugged.
It was an adventure. If it is an ethereal being of cloud and smoke, one that can seal away magical energies, then...
Merlin began rummaging through some books, opening up a bestiary of sorts.
And you found this not in the Bean Kingdom, correct?
Merlin's hut was much more spacious on the inside, Bowsette realized. While it looked like it was barely enough room for one person to sleep on the outside, this hut actually had 4 or 5 separate rooms, and a full kitchen. It looked fairly similar to his house back in Toad Town, but with more portraits up on the wall and warmer colors in the interior design. In fact, there was a picture up on the wall next to where Merlin was standing with a large family photo of all of Merlin's wizardly brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, and ancestors, either in flesh or in spirit. There were enough of them that, had they each the same power that Merlin possessed, they could easily conquer the planet if they wished. Bowsette took great note of that in the event that she decided to take over the Earth one day.
Mario,
Merlin said.
You fought in the war in your younger years, yes? The Creamine War, that is. Of course you did, my apologies. You and your Mario's bombs away endeavors, I forgot.
He stopped on one page in the book and showed it to everyone else. It was a large lanky monster in the shape of a humanoid, but with ghostly features.
If you remember the war, then you surely remember these. The Shrewbites. Mad Science Stein had created these creatures on his own using the DNA of some long-lost alien species, and they wreaked havoc on the battlefield, tossing Kremlings aside like it was nothing and... Well, surely you remember.
Mario nodded.
But they were defeated.
Merlin flipped the page.
Their very essences were wiped out by a magic spell after the war, one of the design of my relative Merlia. They had grown too powerful, so she eradicated them to keep the balance of power steady. You seem to have unleashed that essence back onto the world, Mario.
Oh, Luigi gasped. Mario shrugged.
So what you're saying is, half of my soul is trapped inside some giant demon monster?
Bowsette asked.
Precisely that, yes,
Merlin said. As he said this, though, his eyes caught wind of Bowsette's ever-shapely figure and began to stare with no shame whatsoever. He only averted his gaze once she audibly growled at him. Toadette covered her eyes.
I don't want to do this anymore. That's okay,
Merlin said.
It would not be possible anyway. The mushroom soul is of a level of being that would be too much for even myself to communicate with. And there is no other way to restore her?
Peach asked.
We have come all this way, and none. Bowsette is a husk of her former self and will remain that way for the rest of her life.
Bowsette tensed up at this. She really was doomed? Her ultimate failure wasn't something she could fix with determination and willpower, but something fundamentally, permanently erased within her, a handicap that would forever hinder her? Something was just about to break within Bowsette, make her do something drastic like throwing furniture across the room or going into her shell and never coming back out even if people asked very nicely, when she realized something. That bestiary Merlin was holding. On the book's spine, it was Creatures of Might and Magic, and in a smaller font, it read, Written by the Wizard Merlin. This lying cheat. She grabbed him by the collar and pulled him up to eye level where she could yell at him up close.
You ain't getting away with this so easy, wizard!
She shouted.
The mushroom soul ain't some special evil demon. You know good and well you can fix this yourself, don't you?
Merlin was scared stiff. Literally, he was petrified and caught in stasis.
Let him down,
Peach commanded. Bowsette complied and set him back on his feet. When Merlin came to, he launched into an accusatory attack of his own, but looking directly at the princess.
You can't be serious about this, princess. Please, reconsider.
He pleaded.
This woman is more powerful than you could possibly imagine. I have viewed her magical essence. The mushroom soul isn't even comparable to the horrors you might unleash if you...
Peach slapped him.
Bowsette is the only being standing between the earth and Morton Koopa beginning another reign of terror. We have to stop him before he revives himself, and there's only one way to do that. To trust the one who defeated him before to do it again. Princess.
Merlin looked away in shame.
I am unwelcome in the Mushroom Kingdom. The acts that Bowsette compelled upon me. The pain I caused. I don't care what you did in the past. I don't care what she did in the past, either. I care what we can accomplish in the future.
Peach really was a benevolent ruler. Bowsette would have executed Merlin for lying like that.
I'll go with you and communicate with the mushroom soul,
Merlin said.
It has been done before, when we originally sealed it away into the pieces Mario collected. But if it unseals Bowsette's power, then we will have to face the consequences. And they will be instant.
Dang, that was pretty indicting. What the heck did Bowsette do to him besides beat him up and turn him into a powerless bureaucrat who took the brunt of public blame for her careless foreign policy decisions?
We'll lead the way,
said Peach, with a soft smile. That seemed to cheer him up a little bit. though he was a lot more interested in looking Bowsette's way. She covered herself with her hands and scowled. Merlin must have seen the same exact vision Bowsette was shown back all that time ago when he had first captured her in Toad Town. He knew even back then that Bowsette was a Koopa Royal, and yet he did nothing about it. That was heartening to know that he accepted her in this form, but it made her wonder what he knew that she didn't. Bowsette's own knowledge of her family history was that eons ago, a celestial dragon came from the stars to grace the earth with its presence, and in that time it found love with none other than a Koopa. Over the next 1,000 generations the royal family descended from that original love, the original purity of the celestial blood thinning out every generation but always remaining strong. Now, it was nearly gone, and marrying commoners with no significant power like Bowsette did was helping end the line entirely. Morden himself seemed to suggest that only Bowsette or Morden Jr. even had the celestial blood content necessary to bring him back to life, and that the other Koopalings were too far gone to be of any use. She did have dozens of clones of herself in the form of the Koopa kids, but she kind of forgot about them. Theoretically they'd have the exact same amount of celestial blood, but there was probably some loophole around that made them useless, just as they were useless in everyday life at accomplishing much of anything. Merlin, though, seemed to know more about all of this than he let on. Back when he had captured her, he did ask,
"Did you even know that inside of you glows the heart of true royalty?"
And then added,
"Probably not. Your kind was always ignorant to your own capabilities."
Whatever he meant, he was adamant and stern in his warnings against Bowsette regaining her power. The fact that she was a bit of a notorious villain probably didn't help, but there was something he wasn't telling, and she was going to figure that out. End of chapter. Chapter 40, Chapter 40, Deep in Toadwood Forest. Chapter 40, Deep in the Toadwood Forest. Merlin had been around a very long time. Not only was it that he had grandchildren who were grown, or that he had great-grandchildren that were nearly grown. That was merely the passage of the generations and happened naturally, whether he was there or not. What marked his age was that when he looked at these people around him, he felt a marked difference between their experiences and his own. They had been the survivors of the wars and struggles of their generations, but they knew not of how the world had shaped itself to become the way it now was. They were sucked up in the war in Blank Land, but they were not aware of how 100 years prior a battle between the Mushroom Genie and Mushroom Genie had created Blank Land in the first place. Bowsette, in particular, was ignorant to the forces that led her life into what it was today. Morden Koopa's 1,000-year reign over Dark Land ended by one of his unwanted children, left for dead but raised by a magic Koopa Morden had cast out for his failures a decade prior. And thanks to that upbringing, Morden's youngest became Morden's strongest, a magician powerful enough to overthrow him where none others ever could. It was all about cause and effect. The pathways that the past took to create the present. And Merlin felt in a large way that their trip into the Toadwood Forest on this otherwise sunny afternoon was one of these pathways that would diverge their world into something they had not before seen. This was not a good decision. But it was the only one, perhaps. The trees here were vibrant and green, but not too thick that the sun didn't come peeking out from over the canopy. It would be a nice place for a picnic. But instead they were about to make a deal with a magical being that had the power to seal Merlin's very core of power, if it wished. No, it wasn't a demon, but it may have been worse. At least demons were actively malicious.
"I just want to rest."
The pink toad, the female, was a constant source of dismay for their party of 8, complaining wherever they went. Seeing as she seemed to possess no combat or navigational skills, it was unclear why she even accompanied the rest of these people. Could it be that she was genuinely a friend and wanted to help? The thought seemed preposterous, but Merlin learned never to underestimate the Mario Bros. And their odd ways.
"We're just a little bit further,"
Captain Toad said.
"I can feel it." "We had better be,"
Bowsette muttered. Merlin did not dislike being around such an attractive lady, but he found the entire predicament quite interesting. That King Koopa, wonder to the world, Volcano's ferocity, would have stumbled upon a simple power-up and discovered a hidden identity boiling inside of her all her life that she had never unlocked. The Super Crown was most definitely not intended for the purpose of helping one embrace one's own female gender, and there were not many of them simply out there for the taking like this, either. The cause and effect that Bowsette would come to even exist was exactly why the Earth had entered the dire state that it was currently in. Without the Super Crown, the Mushroom Kingdom would still be stable. Dry Morton would never have existed. But Bowsette would still be a depressive world leader, and Peach's new aura of determined spirit would not be as such. He truly had been around for a very long time, hadn't he? His magic could not predict the future. He often made it seem so, and his hobby as an oracle had been a secondary source of income for him for centuries. What it could do was allow him to see the facets of the past that had led to create the current moment, and through that he could gauge a more full understanding of what the correct action to take was. It was messy and often inaccurate, but Merlin would never have survived as long as he could otherwise. But all of these dealings, everything since Bowsette came to accept herself, had been unprecedented. Never before had something like this happened. Be that it may, something like this may never happen again, he thought. The waves of the past told him that Bowsette was a true enemy, an eternal warrior with the powers of true royalty, one that would never have a satisfied heart without the entire world in her grip. That giving her back the powers she had lost would only further that cause and bring great suffering. She had not realized the full extent of her powers. Even Morton had failed to do that. It would be a waste to explain that to either of them, though, because it was beyond their capability to understand what their celestial blood truly possessed. If they did, it would mean the end of the world. Nevertheless, he continued. A new reality was forming around him, and he embraced it. The party stopped all at once. Ahead of them was a floating, glowing cloud of magical energy, in a humanoid shape with a large mushroom cap-shaped head. Nobody said anything. Merlin stepped forward in front of the rest and held out his hands. And then he died. End of chapter.